Okay, so let's kickstart today's session, right? So for those of you guys who just joined us, for today we will be doing our live analysis session. We'll be taking a look at top setups. I'll be covering mainly on dollar index, euro dollar, and Kiwi dollar. We will be taking a look at the technical setups for that and key levels we can possibly watch. And I'll also hop onto the economic calendar just to run through the key economic data releases for this week. Okay, so for those of you guys who have any questions, right, just feel free to put them under the questions chat. Okay, so let's kickstart the session, right? Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Lee Sing. I provide FX advisory to institutional clients. I'm also part of the team that's recognized by the Technical Analyst Awards as finalist for the best FX research. You can also find me on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions with regards to the recordings, right, if you're watching a version of it on YouTube, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just a quick disclaimer, the information presented here is not to be treated as investment advice. It's for educational purposes only. So this is the agenda that we will be covering for today. We will first take a look at the key economic events on our economic calendar. And following that, we will be taking a look at our trade setups and review on gold, right? And of course, along the way, I'll open the floor to Q&A. So if you have any questions or any specific chat requests, right, just put them under the chat box and Q&A box. Okay, so with that, let's hop on to our economic calendar and we will take a look at the upcoming events. Okay, so I'm currently using Forex Factory. You can also go to Vantage Economic Calendar, right? So for that, just go to vantagemarkets.com. Under Education and Tools, there is an economic calendar. So this would show not just the G7 currencies, but other currencies as well as the key economic releases, right? So you can actually sort them by the impact of the news events. So you can see that the ones in yellow are the ones with the low impact, and then the ones that we have in red are the ones with the high impact. So usually the high impact news events would probably be like interest rate decisions, GDP data, labor market, right? Unemployment data, CPI data, inflation, right? So those are the ones that will be driving the central bank's interest rate decisions. And the medium impact news events would be the ones that we are seeing in yellow, and the low impact ones would be the ones in gray, right? So this you can see that for the upcoming events that we have here. So this it's so for today, right? So you can see that key upcoming events that we have currently would be on a goods trade balance, retail inventory. So mainly economic releases that it's around dollar. And then we have BOE Governor Bailey's speech, as well as Fed Chair Jerome Powell's speech. And more importantly, EIA crude oil stock change. So this would reflect oil inventories, and it also might impact oil prices. So oil prices lately, if you take a look at the chart, right, has been pretty muted. But following dollar strength, right now we're seeing a push up in the dollar. We could see oil prices drop, because when dollar strengthen, it becomes more expensive for foreign currencies to purchase oil. Okay, so so those are the key ones that we have for today. Right, so if you take a look at Forex Factory, pretty much the same, right? So for me, I'll filter it just based on the high and medium impact events. So these are the ones that you have here. So I don't think it's too different from what we're currently seeing, right? So we're seeing the central bank's governor's speech, and we have Euro preliminary CPI data coming up as well. So this would provide indication of whether inflation is actually cooling in the Eurozone region. Right now, it still seems persistent, so it probably supports more hawkish stance by the ECB. And then we have dollar final GDP data. This would be a reflection of growth and labor market amid this higher interest rate environment, right? So if growth remains stable, or if labor market is resilient still, right, then this could garner calls for more interest rate hike by the Fed, right? So if you take a look at the most recent inflation data, we see that inflation dipped slightly, but it's still way above the Fed's 2% target. So those are the key events that we have for today, right? Let's take a look at our setup. So for our setup, right, let's take a look at dollar index first, right? So for dollar index, so you can see that dollar index strengthened a lot, right? So let me just bring up a different chart. It's probably easier to see this. Or maybe I'll just remove the previous markings, right? So if you take a look at this on dollar index, right? So on the higher time frame first, right? So let's start from the weekly time frame. So you can see on the weekly time frame, or even if I were to move back slightly further on the monthly, prices have been sitting on the support zone on the monthly picture, right? So we highlighted the support zones in several of our sessions. So right now we're just seeing a consolidation of this area. If you take a look at the weekly time frame, we're seeing price forming equal lows. You can see here, right? So if the downtrend is to continue on the weekly, we need price to break below this zone to continue to the downside. But at this point in time, we're just seeing a test of this weekly demand area here, right? And right now prices are just hovering around this zone. So that's the picture on the weekly, right? And if you move down to the daily time frame, right? Okay, I have requests, right? DEX, US 100, copper, US oil, gold, right? Yep, I got your request further, right? So I'll be taking a look at it in a moment, right? After we're done with the analysis on dollar index. So in this case, you can see that there is demand here, right? And previously, I also highlighted importance of dojis, right? So dojis on the higher time frames, they represent nothing but ranges on your lower time frame. So when you see price trading sideways for prolonged periods, let's say, for example, on the daily, right, you can see this region here, prices trading sideways for prolonged periods. If you move back further down to the weekly time frame, what you notice is that this prolonged period that we're seeing over here, right, it's characterized by a doji, essentially, which means that there is a lack of clear direction in the market. So we have that, right? So that's the picture. So you can see that we have this doji on the weekly, which also represents a demand zone, right? So if I were to move back to the weekly time frame, you can see that this is the doji on the weekly. So I'll just remove the rest. We're sitting on the monthly support region. We have price coming in to test a weekly doji, right? Essentially the previous range that price traded sideways before that strong breakout, as we can see from this bullish candlestick pattern. So with that, right, if we move down to the daily time frame, you can see that right now prices are currently sitting on the support zone. That's one. And also more importantly, it is holding above an ascending trend line. Okay, so for me, the view on dollar index right now is that we could still see more upside, at least to the next resistance area. And in terms of the next resistance zone, right, it will be this swing high here, essentially this resistance turn support area, right? So if we recall on market structure, we talk about price forming higher lows and higher highs in an uptrend. And in an uptrend, right, we can see that the highs themselves are constant targets. So any pullback into a demand zone, right, we can target price pushing to the next high potentially. So this is what we're seeing here. You can see that price has sustained this bearish market structure, but at this point in time, it stops forming a new low, right? So instead of breaking below to continue its bearish structure, we can see that price actually form equal low, and right now we're seeing that whole move up. So this is the last structure that we have that caused the pullback in price. So if we do see demand zone taking control, right, and price continuing to push higher, then this high itself would be a potential target. So that's the picture on the daily time frame, where we could see price potentially pushing back into this daily resistance area here. So if dollar index is more bullish, right, let's take a look at the other setups that we have as requested. Right, so let's take a look at, let me just remove this drawing. So we have on DEX. So let's take a look at DEX and then US 100. Okay, so on the higher time frame first, right? So if you take a look at it on the monthly, we can see that the price is coming into a resistance area here, right? So we can see this strong resistance back in 2021 October where price pushed up and we're seeing that sharp rejection. We did see consolidation around this area, and right now prices are currently testing this zone again. That's the picture on the monthly time frame. Right, we have just a graphical high that price rejected previously. If we take a look at the weekly time frame, again, we are seeing potentially a formation of a double top, right? You can see price coming in to form equal tops. But for double top, right, so if I put this in close, you can see that price come in, it forms this high and then a subsequent high. What's important to note about this is that for price to form a clean or clear double top, we need a break of the neckline, which is currently not what's happening at the moment yet, right? So you can see that this it's low, right? So price has not actually broken this low. It's still currently hovering around this zone, right? So there isn't anything much that we can find out from the weekly time frame, right? So prices are just consolidating around this area. Now, if we're down to the daily time frame, you can see that at least with the last move, right, price form equal lows. So if you take a look at the structure here, right, if I were to highlight this, price form a new low, broke above it, and right now it's coming to form this support zone again. So like we mentioned on the weekly, right, for price to form a clear bearish market structure, we need price to break below this support zone and break below this low as well, because this low, if price breaks below it, then this low forms the neckline of the double top. If not, right, in a bullish market structure, price would just continue forming your higher lows and higher highs. So until that shows on the daily time frame, right now where we are, right, it's still consolidating on the daily zone. But we do need to keep in mind that prices are coming into a monthly resistance area, right? So if there is a clear break in structure to the downside, then this could be the start of a bearish move. Okay, so that's the picture on the daily, right? Right now on the daily for me, right, it's still not clear. We need price to break below this low in order for a bearish move to be confirmed, right? So if you take a look at a 4 hours time frame, the 4 hours we're pretty much seeing the same thing. My price coming in to form this move, came in to test the support zone. We're seeing a move up and then price continuing to the upside, right? So anywhere along this leg itself, we need to understand that if price pushes into a resistance area, right? So a potential resistance area that I can see, right? Let me just remove the monthly zone. So the potential resistance area that we have would be this zone here. As you can see that if we stretch it across, right? Or even if you put it in close, this is an area that we can draw a horizontal line across that neatly divides the chart. So in this case, when price comes into this area, right, we can see a potential sign of reversal, and that would be an indication of for the move down, right? So examples of what we're looking at, right? When price pushes into this supply zone, if you're on the 1 hour time frame, you can see that right now it's still bullish market structure, price forming higher lows and higher highs. So in this case, this is still not clear in terms of whether price is going to react to a supply zone here, right? If we are seeing signs of that on the lower time frame, we need to first see the reversal. So that's the picture for me on DAX, right? Let's take a look at US 100. Okay. So again, on the higher time frame first, right? So if we take a look at it on the monthly time frame, we can see that prices are testing, pretty much painting the same picture here. You have a resistance turn support area. Again, if I were to put it in close, you can see that this chart divides. I can divide this chart neatly in half, right? So that's the picture on the monthly. We're seeing some kind of resistance that prices are facing, but again, for more move or a bigger move to the downside, we need the lower time frame confirmation. So currently, this is the picture on the weekly. I would say that's not too different from what we're currently seeing on the monthly. Potential resistance area here. Right? You can see a potential descending trend line, but again, right, trend lines can be subjective. So we want to make sure that the lower time frames are indeed painting the right picture before we continue to assume this. So that's the picture on the daily. You can see on the daily, right, currently prices are doing a pullback within this leg itself. Right, so price forming your lows and highs, and nothing much on the daily. That's too different from what we're seeing on the weekly. Okay, so when we go to the 4 hours time frame, you can see on the 4 hours, right, we have price coming in to form a new low, breaking below this low, right? The break in structure over here, and we're currently doing a pullback to this zone. So if we're on the 4 hours, we can also see a potential descending channel that's being formed at the moment. So if we take a look at 4 hours, you can see this descending channel here. So right now, where we are in terms of this, right, we have price sitting on a potential resistance coming into a resistance area here. Right, we have a descending channel. So what you can also do with this, right, we can check if there are any retracement levels that line up here. So this is the move down, and we're expecting that pullback. So we're using the highest and lowest point as reference points to see if there are any resistance levels that line up there. So if you open up the resistance zones, right, the Fibonacci retracements, you can see the 78.6 retracement. This lines up exactly at our resistance area here. So this would be a potential zone. We could see a further move down, right, potentially to the next support level here, which is this low. It's also the level that we saw previously. So this zone. Right, so this is the zone. I'll put this in a different color. Right, so this is a potential move here, right? In terms of, so this is the picture on the 4 hours. Yeah, we're seeing a clear lower lows, lower highs being formed. But again, right, until that picture, it's clearer on the daily, right? Right now, if we're taking any positions, right, it's important that we ensure that we're doing proper trade management. So for me, I think we could see a further move down on US 100 to this resistance area here, right? And right now, prices are also holding below a descending channel. So that's the view on US 100. And the other setup, right? Let's take a look at copper. Okay, so copper is a commodity, which means that in extreme risk environment, right? If it's a market is extremely risk off, then commodity prices tend to retreat. So there are a few ways we can measure market risk sentiment, right? Looking at VIX, which is basically a fear index. It measures volatility in the market. Dollar index, right? Dollars index is a safe haven asset. So in times of extreme uncertainty, dollar index tends to move higher. Of course, there are other indicators as well that impact that. So for example, like your interest rate decisions or economic data. Yeah, so in this case, if you take a look at copper, right? Copper on the monthly picture, we can see that prices came and test this previous resistance and support area. We saw a huge rejection of it, break above it, price coming in to retest the zone. That's the picture on the monthly time frame. If you move down to the weekly time frame, right, we can see that with the most recent move, we have descending channel that's being formed here. So probably have to draw this clearer, but this is the zone, right? And also along with that, if we move to the daily, we can see that prices rejected a clear resistance area here, right? So this zone, you can again, if I have to put these levels in close, you can see that I can draw a horizontal line across that can divide the chart neatly from the bottom and top. So that's the picture for copper, right? We're currently facing resistance. We could expect a further move down here. I think right now where we are for the daily, right, it's that we can see prices are pushing much lower. If you move to the 4 hours time frame, on the 4 hours, we have again just this structure alone, right? You can see that the resistance areas are being respected. First price coming in to test this zone as a support. Breaking structure, retesting this again as a resistance. And the next resistance area that we have, right, that still holds in place would be this region here. So this area, right, you can see that price tested as both a resistance and support level here. And then again, holding below the zone. So if we do see any pullback, this is a potential resistance to look at. So if price pulls back into the zone, right, then it'll also be in line with the potential descending channel that we're seeing here. Right, but in this case, I would say that this is a bit too steep for a channel, so I wouldn't really consider this route. Just take this resistance zone as it is, right? So if price does pull back from here, then this is an area we want to watch, right? I think we could see much bigger move to the downside. In terms of the next support level to watch, this would be the support region. Just looking at how price interacted with this zone, you can see that price failed as a resistance and then tested as a support. So this is a potential area to watch. But if you're on the higher time frame, right, if you move to the daily, you can see that there's still room for more downside. Price broke structure previously. So any pullback in price, right, if the lower time frame starts showing that supply is in control or resistance zones are in control, then this will be in line with the higher time frames direction, given that we have seen this break of structure here. Okay, so that's the picture for me on copper. Let's take a look at US oil and gold. Right, so if I take a look at US oil again on the higher time frame, so oil has been pretty uncertain, right? And if we're seeing that risk of market sentiment coming in with dollar index pushing higher and commodities, currencies and commodities prices pushing lower, right? Then in this case, oil will be impacted as well. So one thing on oil on the monthly time frame, right? We have price coming in to sit testing this zone, right? Previous resistance area tested as a support. Currently, it is sitting on this region. So that's the picture on the monthly time frame. Again, whether we'll see a reversal from here, very much of it depends just from a technical perspective, right? We need to take a look at consolidation before that break in structure. In terms of the fundamentals, right, we need to take a look at OPEC, right? So whether they are going to continue to decrease supply, and also, of course, the situation in Russia, right? So that would also disrupt the supply chain. And other factors would be, for example, China, because China is one of the top crude importer, right? So in this case, if China's recovery it's less is stronger or rather weaker than expected, then that could have a negative impact on oil prices. So that's the picture on the monthly, right? If we move to the weekly time frame, right now we're just seeing that consolidation around this zone, right? You don't really get much of a different picture on the weekly. One thing we do want to note is that we can see that prices are still holding below this descending channel. So something to watch, right? We have a resistance area that has been tested multiple times that price failed to break above. If you put it in close, you can see this zone as well, right? Price testing this zone multiple times. So that's on the weekly, right? If you move to the daily time frame, so right now on oil on the daily, there is no clear direction, right? You can see the prices are still just trading within this range. Just trading within the range, we need a clear break of the range to determine the direction. Right now, where we are, right, it's holding below resistance area as we can see here. Right, so price forming lower lows and lower highs, coming into this zone, retesting this area, right? But a clear break in structure will be needed for movement to the downside. And so you can see that right now, price has been ranging ever since the 1st of May, right? So this is the range that we're looking at. If we do see any upside or any respect of this monthly support zone, we need for one, price to break above the structure and ideally above the descending channel, above this high. So at the moment where we are, I would say that oil prices, right, are more inclined to the downside, right? There's more bearish pressure unless, on the technicals, price is able to break above this high and more importantly, above the previous high here, right? If not at the moment, we'll probably see this range consolidate quite a bit. And if dollar index is to strengthen further, right, then this would make oil prices more expensive for foreign currencies. So this could also put downside pressure on oil prices. Right, so that's the picture on the daily. Right, if you move to the 4 hours, we're pretty much seeing the same thing, price just forming equal lows and highs, right? We need a clear break of the previous low, or clear break of structure for movement to the downside. Okay, so that's the picture on oil at the moment, right? If we're just on the daily time frame, you can see that it is still holding below the descending channel. We have lows that are being formed here, but these lows themselves, right, did not really break any structure, so it's still considered a pretty weak low. Right, so we'll probably have to wait for a clearer change in structure for more direction on oil. Right, at the moment, I think that unless price breaks above this, we could probably see more movement to the downside. Okay, so that's the picture on oil. And then finally, let's take a look at gold. So if you take a look at gold, right, gold has been sitting on the monthly support for a really long time, but right now it seems that we are breaking that point, right? So in this case over here, right, previously on gold, we can see that prices have been holding at the support zone. That's the picture on the monthly. So we probably have to wait for the month's close, right? So about 2 more days before there's a clearer direction on where this is headed, right? If you're on the weekly picture, right, at least where we are, you can see price still forming lower lows, lower highs to the downside. It's also holding below this resistance area here. That's the picture on the weekly. If you move down to the daily time frame, just looking at the most recent price action, prices are still in a bearish market structure. It's forming lower lows, lower highs, right? If I just to take a look at the most recent move here. You can see just the most recent moves, right? If I go on to the 4 hours time frame, it's probably clearer. You can see this bearish market structure. In terms of the movement, price forming new lows and highs, right? So at this point in time, right, I would say that for gold, even though it is sitting on the monthly support region, but across all the other time frames, it's not showing any signs of reversal, right? So if on the daily or even on the 4 hours, you can see that prices are still pushing to the downside. Right, so in terms of the most immediate resistance level that we have on the daily would be this zone here. You can see that if I were to stretch this zone across, again, price respected this zone very neatly as both a resistance and support area. So if we do see a pullback to test this zone, right, this could still serve as a potential resistance. We also have a resistance descending channel that's being formed here. So similar to what we're seeing, right? So for the descending channel, prices are currently testing a potential support area. But again, right, if we do see any reversal from this zone, right, we will first notice that change in market structure on the lower time frame. If not, right, then that's probably not an indication of a downside. So we want to make sure that there is a clear change in market structure before we take any long positions. Right, so that's the picture currently on gold, right? So if we are seeing any consolidation here, right? So if you move to the 1 hour picture, right? So currently prices are still showing a bearish structure. If you move down to the 1 hour picture here, you can see that again there isn't any signs of consolidation. It's just prices are just moving with very muted moves that we're seeing, right? Especially after that push up and the dollar, right? So after dollar strengthened, gold being a dollar denominated currency, right? If dollar strengthens, then all thing constant, right? If dollar strengthen, then gold itself would drop because it's inverse to the dollar strength. Okay, so that's the picture right now on gold. I think that if we do see any pullback, right, then the immediate resistance level that we have on the 4 hours time frame, you can see this zone. So this whole area, this is the last move down. So as long as price holds below this whole leg, right, if it holds below this low, right, the bias is still movement or bearish to the downside. If price breaks above this high, right, so this is usually rare if we're expecting dollar to strengthen, right? Only in extreme risk aversion scenarios, right? Then we will see that movement where dollar and gold strengthen. But in general, right, if you were to just load the dollar index, right, if we compare both of them, you can see that when dollar strengthen, right, gold usually weakens, right? So if dollar pushes higher, we can see that there is gold moves to the downside. So that's generally the case, but of course there are events like back in the pre-pandemic times, right? That's when both dollar and gold travel in the same direction. Okay, so yep, you're very welcome further. Okay, so if there are any other questions, right, please feel free to put them under the chat box and Q&A box, right? If not, then that's all we have for today. So yeah, so that's all that we have for today, right? If I see that we have no other questions, okay, so if we have no other questions, that's all that we have for today. Tomorrow we will be covering our educational session, right? So do sign up for that. You can sign up on vantagemarkets.com/webinars. Okay, so with that, we have come to the end of the session, right? Thank you, everyone. Have a great trading week ahead, and we will catch you guys again tomorrow.